Millions of people are stuck in the rat race, working in jobs that are meaningless and pointless. Start work at 9 a.m., work on meaningless tasks, go home at 5 or 6 in the best case, or even 7, 8 p.m. Go home, crash on the sofa, watch Netflix, then repeat for 5 days, sometimes 6, 12 months a year until they're 65 or 70, and boom, there goes their lives. And on the surface, it might seem like they're making progress. A 5-10% salary increase here that gets a loan for a car upgrade, perhaps even a slightly larger apartment, dinner at a fancier restaurant, a small promotion there that gets rid of the assistant in front of the manager title, and even a 1-month bonus just in time to buy that new sofa. But in reality, there's no real progress. They're just running in circles, earning their cheese. And when the cheese is gone, they run again to earn more cheese. Nothing has changed about the fact that they're still in the same maze, a maze that they don't want to be in. A lot of people don't get the true meaning of the rat race. Being stuck in the rat race is not about working long hours. It's not even about being exhausted or stressed. You can be in a fulfilling job and still feel tired sometimes and experience challenging times and stress. The crux of being stuck in the rat race is working relentlessly in a job that is meaningless to you just so you can buy more stuff that you don't really need and that doesn't even make you happy, taking on consumer debt to buy things you can't afford yet, which forces you to keep working in that job that enables your lifestyle while draining you and slowly squeezing out your joy for life. And this is happening to more and more people. Job unhappiness is at a staggering all-time high. Along with dissatisfaction, workers are experiencing staggering rates of both disengagement and unhappiness. 60% of people reported being emotionally detached at work and 19% as being miserable. While an awful working environment, being underpaid and underappreciated may be reasons for this, being stuck in the wrong career altogether can also be a reason. So why do people stay stuck? Why don't they just leave their jobs and switch to a more fulfilling one? The reason that many people will stay stuck in the rat race forever is because they've adopted a paradigm that I call the false survival mode. A paradigm, in simple words, is the way that you interpret the world. Depending on how you view things, you will think and act differently. People who unconsciously adopt the paradigm of false survival mode always see themselves as being in a survival mode, whereas in reality, most of them are not. This is an awfully sensitive topic, so let me qualify further. Don't get me wrong, there are real survival situations. The clearest example is when someone needs to make a certain amount of money to finance a life-threatening medical condition or that of a loved one, or to keep stress your basic roof over your head. People in these kinds of situations are hanging on to their lives and they're in a real struggle for survival. I am not talking about these people. I'm talking about people who have already fulfilled their basic need for food, shelter, and clothing, but still feel as though they are struggling to survive. The word surviving has taken on a very different meaning nowadays. It's no longer about simply having any kind of clothes to wear, or having a bed to sleep on with a roof over it, or ensuring a minimum necessary caloric intake each day. Rather, it's about being able to afford a certain kind of lifestyle. Eating out instead of making homemade pasta. Living in a 2-bedroom apartment downtown instead of in a studio apartment further out as a single person. Buying $100 jeans and designer ties. Is there even such a thing? People who are stuck in false survival mode have long surpassed the actual survival stage, but falsely believe that they are still lacking a million things, whereas what they're actually lacking is meaning. Imagine that you have 2 tanks. One is a material tank and one is what I call a fulfillment tank. Suppose that your material tank, meaning your stuff and your ability to buy stuff, is 60 or even 70% full, while your fulfillment tank, meaning the level to which you respond to your deepest needs and desires, is empty. Question: doesn't it in this case make sense to stop filling up that material tank and switch over to filling up that fulfillment tank? In other words, switching over to fulfilling work. And this is exactly what I did in my mid-20s. I had been in the rat race for several years, and as my income rose, I fell prey to lifestyle inflation. I started eating out 5 times a week instead of previously 2 or 3. I lived all by myself in an $1,800 2-bedroom apartment in Singapore at that time, which in hindsight was such a waste of money. I wanted out of there, but here was a fact that was hard to accept. Simplifying my lifestyle and spending less would give me the chance to break free and find rewarding work. That was the solution. So I got to work and I came up with an exit plan. I started accumulating a CFF, or a Career Freedom Fund. Watch this video up here if you want to know more about that, of about $50,000. And that was my capital that I would use to invest in my new life. I knew that if I wanted to pursue my dreams of acting, filmmaking, and entrepreneurship, I needed to prepare a financial buffer. Pursuing my dreams, there would definitely be times with little or even no income. And to change careers, I needed to invest money into learning, classes, and courses. Once I left my job, I would experience a huge cash flow deficit. So to counter that, while I was still in the rat race, I needed to accumulate a huge surplus. And I know $50,000 is really not that much, but it was just the right amount for what I was about to do. To accumulate that $50,000, I needed to seriously downsize. And that didn't mean just cutting out a few lattes or so. That meant that I needed to reduce my largest expense, which obviously was my rent. By taking in a roommate into my apartment, a guy who was my friend's fiancé, who was assigned to work in Singapore while she was still staying in Indonesia, I managed to shave off $800 of my rent, leaving me just $800 to pay and $800 to save. I also needed to drastically reduce my shopping sprees. No, luckily I never really did shopping sprees, but every weekend I did buy something at the mall, so I had to put on the brakes with that. I decided that I didn't need to buy a new car like many of my colleagues did. I also didn't need to buy branded handbags and join my other colleagues who paraded in new Chanel, Louis Vuitton, or Miu Miu every other month. And because I didn't want to keep working in a job that I didn't like to buy things that I didn't really need, it also followed that I no longer needed to chase my next promotion, which would give me a salary increase of 10% or something like that. This was what I realized at that moment. I was at a point where my material tank was healthy, I'd say, but my fulfillment tank was close to zero, and that just made me miserable. I knew that to save myself, I needed to turn my attention to that fulfillment tank. I needed to realize that I had enough stuff. Or in other words, that I had achieved my MTH at that point. MTH stands for Money Threshold of Happiness. You might have heard of a famous study done by Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton titled High Income Improves Evaluation of Life but Not Emotional Well-Being, in which they found that emotional well-being continues to rise with a higher income, but that beyond an amount of $75,000 per year, there is no further progress. So I spun off this concept to become more personal. I said that, okay, for most people, this number seems to be $75,000. But what is it for me specifically? What is my personal money threshold of happiness, or income beyond which I do not derive significantly more happiness? At that time, with a total compensation of nearly $100,000, I thought that I had enough. Earning $110,000 and being able to afford more stuff wouldn't really make me much happier. And that way of thinking helped me to finally quit my job and change my career. So back to why most people will never leave the rat race. First, they are stuck in false survival mode where they believe that they are lacking a million of material things, so they keep on circling through the maze, whereas what they're actually lacking is meaning. Second, they don't realize that they are pretty close or have even surpassed their MTH, or money threshold of happiness. At 28, 35, or 40, they are earning more money now than they did in their early 20s. But they fail to realize that earning more money in an unfulfilling job is a lost cause, as it doesn't make them happier but more miserable by the day. They hang on to possessions and take on more debt. They don't see that while their material tank is filling up with stuff, a huge gap is looming in terms of work fulfillment. No wonder that many people feel like there is no meaning in life. We are prioritizing the wrong things. And a crucial step to leave the rat race and close this gaping fulfillment gap is to downsize. A dreaded word, but effective method. As long as your cash flow is burdened with huge expenses and strained by debt, you have to keep on working relentlessly, and you can never change careers to fulfilling work. Because what does career change actually mean? A temporary decrease in income, time, resources shifted to the new endeavor, and also money to invest into that new career. So if you do not lower your expenses and downsize, you will never break the cycle. when I downsized and felt that I had enough, at least for now, and let go of material pursuits for the time being at least. I had a breather and I could finally divert some of my resources into changing careers. And I'll tell you, it was really hard in the beginning. Leaving survival mode, understanding that I had enough because all that I really needed to live were very, very basic things, allowed me to see the world and my situation in a very, very different light. I was no longer trapped in that maze. I didn't need that maze anymore. So I left it, I charted my own path, and I started pouring in resources into that empty fulfillment tank. And in case you want to know more about my story, you can visit my blog, multiplecareers.com. You can subscribe to my mailing list, and I will send you more stories directly to your inbox. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys, and take care.